opt-in.
It's a double opt-in. Yeah.
Do you want to create me as a moderator or not right now?
Uh, well, can you see me there? Is it working?
Nope.
Really? No, it is. It is. I checked.
Cool.
Yeah. We are live.
I can
Yay.
see you now. I
Yeah.
can see Dragon.
That would be
I
Heidi.
can see Heidi being eaten by
You
a
can see
dragon.
Heidi being. There we go. Okay, so we are here. That is
That's not Heidi.
exciting.
That's Theodore.
That's Theodore. Okay. So
He
for
doesn't
those
have
of
to be
you who are
here.
watching, thank you for this. I had everything set up and I tested it twice. And actually, if you didn't realize it, I accidentally had it live streaming automatically from Riverside. So I had a couple of my podcast episodes that I batch contented show up on live. And then I had to go and delete them real quick because that's not how that's supposed to be. But yeah, that happened. So I tech issues happen and it's not my favorite, but here we are. And we're glad that you are here. And if you are, give us a shout out somewhere, anywhere,
Over the
because
rainbow.
over the rainbow, give us a shout out in the chat
Out there.
box or a
Somewhere I
comment
used to know.
somewhere I used to know, any of those things. So this is my first live stream for this channel, and I'm super excited about that. And so I brought Heidi on here to help be my guinea pig and also talk about superheroes because you have a lot of stuff going on with superheroes. Hey, Adam! That's fantastic. Super excited you're here. And
Hello. I'm here
hi.
too.
Yes, Heidi's here too. Actually, this Friday, I actually
Hi,
remembered my
Theodore.
first book birthday. Like this Friday
You
is
had a book
the book
birthday?
of this Friday is a book anniversary for Nobody's Hero. So I'm very excited about that.
Ah, congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I mean, you
forced
have so
myself to
many
look up the
you have
book
so many
anniversary for
books.
one.
Like it's kind of like you have too many kids. Like there's no way you can remember all those birthdays.
Yeah, I tend to schedule them on multiples of 9 though, so a lot of them are like on the 27th or the 8th, so that helps.
That's too much math for me. That's really too much math for me. Wow.
You have to have a lucky number and then know what it's divisible by. And 9 is the coolest lucky number because it's divisible by cool things because like 9 times 3 is 27 and 2 plus 7 is 9. And 9 times 9 is 81 and 8
Yeah,
plus
you've
1 is
already
9. So
wow.
9 is the magic number. It's got
Is that
magic
I'm
to it.
guessing 9 is your favorite number then?
It's the best number.
No, I'm sticking with
I was born the
7.
ninth, and cats have 9 lives, so it's like fate.
Still sticking with 7. I don't know why. I just like the number 7. Okay, so while we're hanging out here before we get started, although we are basically started already because you can see our awesome faces, grab a drink, get comfy, say hi in the chat. And to start us off for superpowered hijinks, okay, the classic question that I'm sure you've never been asked, Heidi, and you can also reply to this in the chat or comments. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? And as a bonus, what superpower would you really want? And what superpower would you
Pause.
not want? Like, absolutely wouldn't want it. So, what would you want and not want?
We freezing up. Yeah, I think we might be. But kitten gloves are the one I want because you could shred curtains with them and like
Uh
use
huh.
them to open packages that are shrink wrapped.
Okay.
And you know how great powers have great responsibility? Kitten claws are not great powers; they're minimal powers, so they come with minimal responsibility.
Okay.
As opposed to healing, which would be the worst superpower. If you could heal anybody, you would always be stressed out because there would always be someone to heal, and you would never be able to heal all of them, and you would go crazy. You'd have to make so many choices about how you expend that energy. There'd always be somebody who needed you. Like if you had ultimate healing powers, wouldn't you just want to hang out in like emergency rooms and cancer wards all the time? And you
Mm-hmm.
would have no life
Actually, that was a problem
after
on Heroes.
a while.
Peter Petrelli on Heroes got
I
healing
cannot have healing
powers,
powers.
and yeah, Peter Petrelli on Heroes got healing powers, and he would just literally like be a first responder, and
I'm
then
not
like
catching most of what you're saying. You're just like,
really, let's wait for it to catch up. Better now?
Yeah, you're breaking up a lot. It's the internet.
How's your? Because my internet is
Yeah, now
tight
I can
here.
hear. See if it keeps up.
Do you need to like link up to the star again?
Yeah, mine's usually pretty good, but it's not talking to you. And it was good when I was on the other computer out there. Says I'm fine.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm solid here, so let's just keep going. But yeah, Peter Petrelli on Heroes was
Okay.
someone had to intervene because he just kept healing people until he was going to die, and he didn't care. He had issues. Hey, Pam made it, and
I always
Mason
think
made
that
it.
power would give you issues after a while.
I really, yeah. So that's why I like writing healers though, because then they have these wonderful complexes. So, because I realize I've done healing powers a couple of times now. My latest one, Josie, she's not a superhero. She's a phoenix, but she has some healing powers, and it's terrible.
Yeah. I think you have to make them severely limited, just otherwise it's like too,
You
otherwise
really
it's
do.
just too easy to get caught up in just, you know. Plus, then nobody gets to die in your world. Like, who dies in that world if somebody's just going around healing everybody?
Or like people feel really guilty. Like you have this
Mm,
character who's constantly guilty, and that's kind of a buzzkill after a while.
yeah.
Okay, so in the chat again, tell a shout out. Adam says he would like flight, but it would have to be paired with super speed, which makes sense. And
And also, flight and super speed, you'd also need like skin that can handle the air,
yeah,
uh, because otherwise you're gonna get up with your skin like blasted off. I'm just saying, if you're going super fast and you're super flying and you have regular skin, that's just a lot of exfoliation.
I like that. Yeah, truth. Now, I mean, I want teleportation. I always want teleportation, especially after like having to do a lot of flights recently. I just want instantaneous
But
travel.
teleportation should just exist. I think teleportation is better as an in-world tech than a power personally,
Hmm.
because otherwise you just end up being the group taxi cab, and that's lame after a while.
I mean, it helps me with my urban fantasy. I just have Alice teleport people places, and then I have to find reasons for her not to be able to use her power. Because,
I just like to imagine her friends get drunk and then call her like an Uber.
oh, this happens. Like, it's not even a question,
You know,
especially because she likes to party and hang out at clubs. So she ends up being like the DD,
mm,
designated teleporter DT, something like that.
yeah, well, that could get messy real quick. What
Hmm.
happens if you throw up in a portal like you do in the back of an Uber? Not that I've ever done
I
that.
don't know, because
Good
hers is
stories.
instantaneous. So, look, I think you would just puke on the other one after you got to the other side. So, this is why all of y'all, you knew you had to show up because we're already talking about getting drunk and teleporting. And then where would you puke? This is where we're going here.
Don't teleport and drink.
Don't teleport and drink. There we go.
That's how you end up in Antarctica.
That's how you. Oh, now I have to have someone do that. Okay. So, we've gone there. And I think we've done quite a bit with that question. I don't know. I think we're going to jump right into things now because we have a good group of people in there, which is fantastic. And super excited again that you guys took the time to hang out with us. And anyone else who shows up, good to have you here. And welcome to Author Culture with
And
me.
Theodore.
Hi, Theodore. Welcome to Author Culture with me, Janita Polito. And of course, my special guest here, the Chaos Gremlin, H.L. Burke. If you're new here, we help science fiction and fantasy authors achieve sustainable success in a chaotic publishing industry. And sometimes in the live stream, we kind of bring the chaos too, but we're also going to have cool things to talk about tonight. So that's good as well. And Heidi, what kind of cool stuff do you do with superheroes for anyone who doesn't know?
I write books about them, and then
Hmm.
sometimes I put out anthologies with them, and then
Hmm.
sometimes they talk to me when I'm driving on my commute so that I'm not alone.
And sometimes you're like totally zoned out when you're at Costco with your husband because your brain is talking, huh?
Unfortunately, Yeah, it's now Sam's Club. I keep mixing them up
Okay.
because Oregon had Costco and West Virginia has Sam's Club,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very similar.
They
Like
are.
there's a couple differences, but like they're like mirror worlds of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Costco is mirror world Sam's Club or vice versa, and
Mm-hmm.
so I keep calling them the wrong thing. But yeah, I'll be wandering around Costco or Sam's Club doing dialogue in my head for my most recent book. Matt will be like, "Are you okay?"
I think that's just a writer thing too, like the whole scowling thing or the whole cranky thing or
Or
the
if you're doing it like in this is another mirror world thing. In Oregon, it's Fred Meyer. Here, it's Kroger. But if you're walking around doing emotional scenes in your head and like making the facial expressions, and yeah, that
that
so
is
I do that
definitely
too.
a thing. Yeah, and for any of y'all in the
Yeah.
chat, go ahead and share any weird writer things you do because we're all about sometimes having those weird writer things here because
And
it's what
also,
you
are there
do.
any other mirror stores like we got Kroger and Fred
Hmm.
Meyer, and there's Vons and Safeway. Vons and Safeway are mirror world, and Hardee's and Carl's Jr. are mirror world.
Yeah.
So, but somehow they exist in the same universe, which means that our universe at one point had collided with another universe, and one universe had Hardee's and Kroger and Vaughn's and Sam's Club, and the other one had Costco, and all the other ones combined. We're stuck in this world that has both.
And that's how it goes sometimes.
I've had a cold all week, and I'm a little loopy.
Little loopy, but we're doing this anyway and it's going to be
Okay.
great. So, we're talking specifically about how to write superhero fiction tonight cuz you've done over 20 books on that and you've done Kickstarters and you won some awards too. Or at least one award for that. You won the which book was
I've
that?
been a finalist a few times. Reunion won for novella.
Mhm.
I was a finalist for Reformed and Power On. Power On made it all the way up to the top podium for Book of the Year, which was
Mhm.
really nice. But curse you, Gillian Bronte Adams!
You
Why
know,
I
it's
can't.
really hard to go against horses. Like the power of the horses. I mean,
Oh, I had an invisible ferret. Yes, invisible ferret doesn't beat magic horse.
it really
All
doesn't.
this
Like that's
horse
a pretty
girl.
potent thing
I was
there.
I was a horse girl. I was
Mhm.
definitely a cat girl. Still
Mhm.
am.
Yeah, but those are, I mean, those are
Mm,
pretty cool horses she has there. Her book cover arts for them is really pretty.
it is very nice. Yes.
Hmm. All right, so talking about all these superheroes, how does, what makes a book a superhero book? So, what are like the core elements? What are some things that your superhero book has to have to make it a superhero book versus a glorified urban fantasy or like a thriller with maybe like one weird test tube super soldier in it?
Well, they're all very, there's a lot of cross genre. I feel like a lot of superhero is kind of in the tone where it can be a little bit intentionally campy, comparatively to say urban fantasy. And usually the powers are science adjacent but very ill defined, which I think is really cool because it's like they usually have a sciencey background like genetics or uh, quantum rays or gamma radiation, which makes absolutely no sense. But necessarily magic. I mean, you do get some magic in superhero universes, but I don't think it should be the core of it. Otherwise, you're pushing into urban fantasy. I also think that the setting is important. Um, it goes best in contemporary and like a world that we are in. So comparatively, other things like urban fantasy, they'll have like this underworld where there's these worlds, a fantasy world that exists underneath our world and we're unaware of it. So it makes it feel like it is another world, another universe. Superheroes need to me to be a superhero book. It needs to feel like it could happen here if we just threw some superpowers into our world
Hmm.
or some super tech sometimes. Like I try to I have a preference for powered heroes over say Batman types who are just techie geniuses with the stuff. And that's just a personal preference. Both are legitimate. So
Yeah,
I think
and like
that to me those are the two things because it is kind of a yeah. I was gonna
there
say
are
it is
some
kind of one of
Jason,
those
yeah.
genres that can mesh really well with other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, Batman's hero power being that he's rich, of course. And his is interesting because with Iron Man, he's also rich, but he's really, really smart. And so his tech really is part of his superpowered brain. Whereas versus Batman, I mean, he has someone he hires to make stuff too. So he doesn't even have that personal
Depending on the
brain connection.
version. So, excuse me. Yeah, some versions of Batman are pretty dang smart. So,
It's
you know,
true.
the whole
It's true.
detective element.
But I still don't see it the same level as Iron Man, where he really has like his ego is involved in that in some way. Like he's a super genius type who's just constantly tinkering and making like how many suits can he make because he can.
Yeah, well, also Batman kind of plays on being the billionaire playboy. Secret identity is that he doesn't want to be taken too seriously. He wants to be seen as Bruce Wayne in the public eye, whereas Iron Man, of course, is Tony Stark is Iron Man. He will just tell you.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I actually I found that in the movie that wasn't I don't think that was planned. Like when they were filming that, he wasn't actually supposed to reveal himself, and then he did. And they're like, "We're keeping it. Like we're keeping that take."
yeah, but it's iconic to the character, and it's become kind of very essential to who he is going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Batman being a secret is very tied into who that character is. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they do everything they can to not expose it in most
Mm-hmm.
versions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point. I see in the chat saying Batman's tagline is "World's Greatest Detective," and I guess that would be the difference between Batman and Iron Man. Is Iron Man is like very extroverted and kind of a super nerd about it, but kind of a sexy nerd who's a playboy, and Batman is a broody detective sort of thing, more of an introvert maybe.
Yeah, I did grow up on Adam West Batman, so that is a little less broody.
That's true. You grew up with pajama Batman.
Yeah. Holy sheet metal Batman.
So
So
we
yeah,
have,
that and I do have preference for that. So
and I think there are interesting things you can say if it's someone with a suit, but you are saying different things. And I think you brought that out. Superhero as a genre is it's a diverse genre. I don't think it's the same as when you and I co-hosted a podcast. We talked about how steampunk is almost an aesthetic more than a genre because it's so visual. Versus
yeah.
superhero, it is more than just an aesthetic. And in fact, you often don't have as much aesthetic. You have more of like the characters, but I would say it's very character driven and it's very most individual driven on how you build an individual with their powers or with their special suit and what that says about them.
Yeah, and I think that's what draws me to it is comparatively, superhero fiction tends to take, for the most part, normal people and put them in extraordinary situations. They're people who you could meet. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man's very a kid on the block, boy next door. Um, so is Captain America. There are some exceptions, but a lot of them are just normal guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has
Was
that
there a
kind
mute
of.
on this?
I just
I'm
think
gonna
there's.
cough, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think if you go to the original, if you go to Riverside, you can mute yourself, and you can just cough, and it'll be fine.
Sorry, I've been sick lately.
Oh no, it's legit. I mean, I have water here, and I'm not sick because it's water. So
Okay, here we go.
it's when you're building out like your cast of characters or your single character in your superhero book, I would say you definitely have to think about the powers pretty carefully. And I know that's something when you're brainstorming a new superhero book, the first thing, like you think about the character interactions because you're character driven, but then you're thinking about the powers and what it says about the person and how you're going to use them in the story.
All right, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but it depends on sometimes. Sometimes the powers are very much telling a story about who the character is, and it
Mm-hmm.
says something about them. Like Fade has his thing where he breaks down and can go through walls, but he's afraid of being contained. He always needs his freedom, but he's also
Mm-hmm.
afraid that he can't have a home. But then other times it's just what is the most plot convenient, and I just really need the power, so I
That's true.
grab pluck it onto someone. Um, or it's just cool. Like I ironically gave Wildfire my
Mm-hmm.
most stable character who has like no temper, firepower, and he's literally fiery, but he's the least fiery of my characters, and it's just funny.
Well, and so basically the power can be something that really connects the character, or the power can be something that sort of challenges the character and, is a fun contrast that kind of works as a foil against their personality.
Yeah. And I think the power would eventually shape your personality, even if it isn't something that you initially feel drawn to or, attached to.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
said, yeah, I like to like kind of mash things together and see how they work. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's very natural and sometimes it's more, um, and that's just what's fun. Like, I don't think Nixie's water powers have anything to do with her personality, but I hadn't had a water power sable super able person yet, and I just really wanted one, especially because I knew it would interact really well with Switch's lightning. So
Hmm.
in that case, I just went for the fun thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, and even then you're thinking about the interaction between her and Switch. So it's still kind of setting up that. Plus, I don't know, I always thought of Nixie as very, buoyant, like water. She's very buoyant.
As I say, I feel like buoyant things float in water. So if she had boat powers,
Maybe there we go. She floats in water.
she's boat man, boat girl,
She's boat girl. There we go.
boat girl. Because Batgirl's been typoed.
There we go.
That's what happens with that
Hmm.
the error. What is the supervillain meme about the errorist who
Hmm.
makes you do typos?
Hmm.
Uh,
I think that one other thing that comes up with superpowers and superheroes a lot is the idea of what is the government's role in it versus what is the individual's role. Because there's always talk about a vigilante versus you have DOSA. So you have this whole government department that pretty much likes to keep tabs on the superpowered people and know where they are and such. I mean, you can kind
yeah,
of
but they're
be free.
incompetent. So
Yeah, they're incompetent, but they are a really big presence. Whereas, like if you think about, I was rewatching some seasons of Arrow, the CW show Arrow, and part of the first couple seasons is, oh, it's a vigilante, it's against the law, it's a vigilante, they're doing their own thing, they're against, order and an authority.
yeah, I mean that's also like a choice because like
Hmm.
the Avengers were authorized.
Yeah, you can have
In some
authorized.
versions,
Yeah.
Batman is an authorized deputy. So
Hmm. Yeah, so it can really kind of depend um, on where people stand with that and what kind of things you're choosing. But that's definitely, if you're looking at writing a superhero story, that's definitely another angle you can go, or at least think about is your vigilante like official, or are they not official and they're kind of under the radar with that?
yeah, and that's going to influence your whole story. Like, do they need a secret identity?
Hmm.
Are they going to be like having to get arrested? Like, how do they have to take in their people? Because if you can't turn them over to the police directly, what do you do with them? So yeah, however you do, I think it really have to decide what kind of story you want to tell, and
Hmm.
then work at it from there, and
Hmm. And so someone's
keep
sitting down and they're
it
figuring out their
consistent.
powers.
Because otherwise, it's gonna.
Hmm. So someone's sitting down, they're figuring out their powers and they're figuring out their kind of story thing, and they're going to have to figure out, okay, what does the government have any involvement or not in this? Is it a local story or is it like a big national story? Which you've done both. You've done books that have been very like had a larger scope, and then a lot of your books have a much smaller scope.
Yeah, I tend towards the smaller ones just because it's easier to manage, and most of
Hmm.
my heroes don't have like world-ending powers. They've got small powers,
Hmm.
um, which is much easier to keep them contained. Uh, but yeah, I always prefer to save person over saving the world. It's just easier to manage, and usually the emotional connection is easier to get. Plus,
Hmm.
once you've saved the world once, it's hard to escalate, and that kind of ends how many books you can write.
That's true. That's usually in comic books when they end up restarting the series
Yeah,
again because oh that happened, or they like retcon
yeah,
things or stuff like that. And of course, the other thing that superheroes let you do is the whole thing about a superhero versus a supervillain is a hero versus a villain, good versus evil. So it really naturally lends to stories with morality in some way because you have a good guy and a bad guy, right?
not in my universe so much. Like
Hmm.
in Dosaverse, villain versus hero is kind of a almost a political thing.
Hmm.
Um, it's more what Dosa has chosen. Of course, the villains do mostly do crime,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of them are not terrible people, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes across. A lot of them end up getting reformed. Some of them end up doing their own thing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of adjacent to Dosa, but not the same.
Mm-hmm.
But there is always like you. It's hard to do that sort of. I mean, it's hard to do any sort of story well without having an actual good versus evil plot, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um, Otherwise, what are you fighting? Like if the good guys and the bad guys, or the antagonist and the protagonist, are both equally good, I mean, you can get some conflict out of that, but in the end, it's kind of a little bit of a letdown for me. You have to make a choice on what side of the story you
Mm-hmm.
want people to fall, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it to always be super black and white. Which is why I've chosen to make Dosa sometimes incompetent and sometimes corrupt, and some villains actually have good motives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah. That said, yeah, there is a lot to be said about just standing up for and fighting, that in that genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even the fact that you're having these questions, like the whole idea of the supervillain rehabilitation project says, okay, these people need to be rehabilitated from something, and that matters. And if they're rehabilitated, then they can fight for the good guys and they can do that. There is some opportunity for redemption there.
Yeah, and redemption can look different in a lot of ways. It's because not everybody's going to always fit the Dosa mold, and Dosa is stronger when it has these people who are able to think outside of like their boxes too. So that does kind of influence things. About there's the
Mm-hmm.
villains who come in and they have their own ways of doing things with it, like and sometimes it's actually ends up being showing mercy instead of justice,
Mm-hmm.
and that can actually be a villain move, and sometimes just because it goes against the hard written letter of the law. And I think that's also something I want to explore, is like what's always legal isn't what's always right, and sometimes the villains have to make that choice, to be a villain for good.
Yeah. What is, you have a quote actually on a t-shirt, right? Is that
Yeah, it's
some?
act like a hero, think like a villain, which I think it partially means just the villain doesn't leave anything on the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you always have to moderate it with the action of a hero. A villain will think of all possible ways. Everything's on the table for a villain.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, you have to choose to act like a hero, which means you may know the way to murder that person. That doesn't mean you can do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that was something that, and the superhero book I wrote, that was something where the character just had to get told, okay, you keep dancing on both sides of the law, but if the good guys don't know you're a good guy, eventually they're going to shoot you. And then you're going to get like everyone attacking you because you're not taking sides.
So I don't know. In my version, it kind of falls on the side that like you can sometimes that rigid side, that rigid
Mm-hmm.
us versus them, it's going to cause trouble for
Mm-hmm.
people, and it ends up biting people in the rear end a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like to have it play with like sometimes you have to be willing to go outside of the legal law to do the right thing, and sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
have to make choices. It's I do like to play a little bit in the gray areas because of that, because I don't know. I don't like characters who are so tied to the good that they won't do the right thing, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. And they
Yeah.
drive me crazy. And so I do like to put that sort of quandary in front of my characters every so often,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to show that sometimes you do have to go and step out and be villains for a couple days to fix something. Like the story I'm writing right now, Game Changer, has that between Sean and Jake, because Sean is the White Knight and Jake is the former villain who plays the chaotic good. And um, Sean is kind of pushed into Jake's world because Dosa is after Oliver's father,
Mm-hmm.
because they think he did something that he didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And so Oliver's going off book and Jake's helping him go off book to investigate the stuff. And something he shouldn't be doing, but Jake just says, Jake gives the sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission line, and then they just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like to play with that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that is worth playing with. I think more of what I was reflecting on that is that at a certain point, even if you're going to do that, you still have to be able to trust some people to know what reasons you're actually crossing that line for, and where you're
Yeah.
ultimately standing on in that. You do have to open yourself to trust some people.
Some people, not some government agencies.
Yeah.
Some big corporations.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's I think it's funny that both of us have these like skeptical these stories that are slightly skeptical of government agencies and you're, married to a former Marine and I'm an Air Force brat and
Well, that's why we're
that's why.
skeptical.
Yeah.
We have met very few Marines who are not skeptical of the government.
Oh yeah, but and yep, Air Force was the same way. I was like, this is something my parents instilled in me, and they were both in the Air Force.
They've seen things.
They've seen things. Also just the
Yes, they
general,
know.
just the bureaucracy. The stuff of
Yeah,
that's just the way it goes.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, well. So yeah, that I did very much base DOSA off my experiences of being a military spouse and like some of the nonsense that happens. It's not necessarily always malevolent, but it's
Hmm.
incompetent, and sometimes it's hard to see the difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
that was definitely a theme in my books.
Hmm. So we're talking about someone who's just sitting down to write superhero fiction. I mean, this isn't a huge market here. Like, this isn't a genre that is very well known. Still, people are used to watching on TV or in movies more than reading it in books. Of course, they're used to comic books too, but
Yeah, but very different
hmm.
way of absorbing entertainment.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And so, one way that you can approach that is by diving into adjacent genres, which one of the easier ways is you can sort of tag it under urban fantasy. It's not urban fantasy because you don't have like elves and things, although ironically in comic books you will have Thor show up, which is
Yeah.
urban fantasy. But you can,
Or night elves or dark elves or whatever.
oh my goodness, yeah, just kind of random stuff like that where it's, or magic shows up because you have Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
And
they
it,
just would. I just feel like they would just throw anything at comics back in the day. It was like,
yep. Hmm.
oh, we're doing wizards now.
There we go.
Zombies.
And also, shout out there in the chat box. What's your favorite? Like, are you Marvel or are you DC? Or are you something else? Because that's a big question to ask. Just let us know. So, Heidi, first, before we go on further with the marketing side of this, Marvel or DC?
Overall, Marvel. I think
Hmm.
my first real superhero exposure was probably Batman the animated series over anything else. But generally speaking, I prefer Marvel's movies and TV shows and stuff over DC.
Hmm. Is there any particular reason?
Tone, Marvel tends to deal with more down to earth human characters, and DC tends to have more like Wonder Woman and Superman and Martian manhunters that have an otherworldly sense to them that they've come to our world to find their way into it. And there are some
Hmm.
exceptions. Obviously, the Flash is a pretty normal guy,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I would say the balance, and Marvel does have some gods too, obviously, but the balance between gods to normal people is more tipped towards normal people on the Marvel side than it is on the DC side.
Hmm.
And that's what I
Yeah.
prefer. I prefer the normal guys.
Yeah, I found that too. And I my first thing was X-Men, and that's Marvel. So right away I'm over there. And even that, X-Men, well, as soon as you include something like X-Men where you have people who have like one power but just want to live a normal life, then you're going to have a lot more of that grounded sense or, much more of the population, still a tiny amount, but more of the population has powers, then you're not going to have that sense of reverence over them in the same way.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay, now that we put that
Plus,
important thing out there, go ahead.
yeah, I think what my favorite, one of the reasons I started writing superheroes partially was a lot of those like Avengers just hanging around memes that people
Yeah.
do is like around the Avengers Tower on what on movie night, or who's ordering Chinese, or who's introducing Steve to what new TV shows because he hasn't watched them yet. And
Oh, yeah.
those are the things that I think made me think a little bit more about how superheroes can be a venue not just for like these huge world-ending stories, but just for like people having some fun. So, which I like.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, DC can be great too. And I know they have some, like, Batman is pretty cool. I have enjoyed the Aquaman movies with Jason Momoa because of Jason Momoa in it, and it was just fun. But even that, I liked that because it reminded me more of a Marvel movie where it didn't take itself quite as seriously and had like fun stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up on a lot of the Batmans, and I grew up on well, Batman was pretty cheesy back when I was growing up on
Yeah.
it. Um, but yeah, and I liked Wonder Woman fine. But yeah, I have overall better experience with Marvel. I mean,
Hmm.
even when Marvel's bad, it's usually just forgettable bad as opposed to turns me off bad.
Hmm. Okay, Adam says he's a DC fanboy and a Snyderverse fanboy. Oh, you can stick around, Adam. It's okay. No, I do. I have to say, Snyderverse definitely made its mark very strongly on the DC universe. It did that.
Yeah, I've been told that I just haven't had the time to watch a movie that long.
Mm. It, it has a lot of. I have to say, Zack Snyder really uses the medium to try to say a lot of things,
Yeah.
and I will give him kudos for that. Which is why Justice League, when he wasn't at the helm, was just kind of painful because it was so weird to have something that wasn't. You could tell it wasn't his voice in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely uses the medium to say a lot of different potent things that he's interested in saying. Adam says, in Christ, there's no DC nor Marvel. We can all be friends. It's true.
Yes.
Although, when I was dating my future husband, we did ask, okay, DC or Marvel? Like, we got that out of the way. And, like, one of our early conversations, I think even before we were dating, like, which side. But then we'll watch DC stuff, too, because we're both geeks. So we'll really go for both sides.
Yeah, I tend to only watch about two movies a year, so I tend to be very picky about which ones I do. So that also influences it because it's just too much to keep up with nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I I'm pickier now. So, I mean, I have a lot of time. I mean, I like to just throw on movies while I'm working because it'll leave background noise for me because I can do that. Like, I know some people need silence. I don't.
I don't need
But,
silence, but I can't do movies. I will definitely pay more attention to the movie, or I will completely focus on what I'm doing and have no idea what's going on in the movie next time I check back in on it.
I can balance it out. But Marvel's just been so iffy lately, especially all the stuff on Disney, just kind of throwing thing after thing after thing out. That's
It's just
been.
there's a point where it's too much content and it's coming out so fast, and then everything is so expensive. It's like, how are you spending all this money?
All right, everyone
Aren't
out
you being
there.
nice?
So, here's your next question. Favorite Marvel movie? Or you can do your favorite two movies if you want to do that. We want to hear it.
I'm still going to be the odd man out who likes Captain Marvel the most because it has a cat.
I think that's a very underrated reason for liking it. I have to say, like, I think a lot of people don't understand the appeal of the cat and that.
The cat is so huge, and there's other reasons. Like I like having a snark female who snarks because we don't get that enough. Like she's a smirky girl, and I'm a smirky girl. And there's it's kind of like a buddy road trip, and then there's the cute alien kid. But the appeal of the cat though, Goose, is it cannot be underestimated how much I freaked out when I first saw the first poster, and there's like the first poster is her going through the bay doors, and to the side there's just this little cat silhouette, like almost hidden, and I'm like, the cat is there.
Okay, so
I
I'm
love
going to
that
ruin
cat.
my own question because I like way too many comic book things. So I'm going to give you my top five, and even that is really hard for me. The second X-Men movie is pretty much perfect in terms of for X-Men. X-Men's has a really rough road for movies. That one was pretty much perfect. First Avengers movie, first Iron Man movie, second Captain America movie, and I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. There we go. I left out like 15 others and two TV shows, but there we go.
I prefer two over one.
Oh, and then someone mentioned Shang-Chi. I love Shang-Chi. If you have to like see one other Marvel thing, you have to see Shang-Chi.
So I have a different list of movies that I think are my favorites versus ones that I think are objectively better. Because if I were to pick the best Marvel movie, it probably would be Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I think that just from a writing and technical standpoint, it's probably the best done.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily like it the most because it doesn't have things like cats in it.
It's true. Oh my goodness. And there's my husband shut up in the chat box. Hi, Steven. Oh, he brought up Aquaman. That's true. Aquaman was just fun because it was bro fun. If you wanted a bro fun movie, that would be Aquaman.
If we gave Captain America a cat, it would be Captain America, and he would be my favorite thing ever.
So I think you need to just do like as a new marketing thing, just insert cats randomly into all of the do memes with cats in these various movies.
I've had a lot of cats in my marketing. They keep coming up.
It happens.
So
And they've had a couple of cat superpowers too.
yeah, a few.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's if I had the amount of times that a person falls in love with a cat in my universe, if I had a nickel for every time a person falls in love with a cat in my universe, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not a lot.
It's still 2 nickels. Yes, it is.
Still 2 nickels.
Okay, so if someone's marketing in this, one of the things that you do have to recognize is that it is more challenging. So if you can hook yourself into an adjacent genre, you're better. I wrote a lot of urban fantasy before I did my first superhero book. And even though my superhero book is definitely different, like it's definitely superheroes, I created a similar tone to some of my urban fantasy so that I get crossover readers. And they go over and like, yeah, it's not urban fantasy, but it's still fun and reminds me of that. So, and I know for you have the superhero rom-com series as well as all of the other series that you've had going on.
Yeah, well, I tried to hook into the Hallmark stuff, but the audiences for that I do that just because I like it. I don't really know that there's that much crossover. Every time I've tried to convince rom-com readers that they really want to read my superhero stuff, I think they still think it's a little bit strange. I tend to be writing for people who don't know that they want to read romances. They just know they want to read superhero and then accidentally find the romances. And actually, apparently, I'm a little bit dark for rom-coms because my characters do have somewhat tragic backstories, and it's just a little bit not fluffy enough in places. So, but I think that for me, word of mouth is what sells these stories, and it's definitely one of those things where people have to be told that they'll like it by somebody else. And the other thing that sells it is the snippets, because it's not selling so hard on the tropes. The tropes, I was just don't seem to move these stories very much for me. But posting snippets of quotes and jokes and stuff tends to be where I get the most reaction. People need to actually see how it works because a lot of people just don't understand it yet. They don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, yep, I agree with that.
Educating readers is really hard. There's only really 2 ways to do it. One is to show them a pretty good sample, and the other is to get someone else to tell them they'll like it who's not you.
And I mean, I've done some pretty well. Mine took a bit where people just again wouldn't understand what it was at first, but I hit on that, and this is a very basic like tagline, but it seemed to work. A Marvel meets The Office kind of thing, where it has that everyone understands Marvel and they understand The Office with the kind of monotonous humor of everyday things. And because my character is a superhero publicist and works in an office with supervillains, it has that kind of vibe. And so I think it really comes down to like having the quotes and those kind of things, and then trying to find out, okay, what kind of things are people going to connect with this? Like, what is this similar to in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just tried to do that with the Marvel versus Hallmark thing, and it seems to appeal to cozy fantasy readers more than it does to the Hallmark thing. The Hallmark is almost adjacent at this point. And like I said, it's partially because I do tend to dive into things that's Hallmark expects a really super cozy stuff, and I've been kind of getting away from that just because they get a little irritated with me because a character might have like a tragic death in their background or an abusive mother or something like that, and even that's just too much, even if it's not shown, even if it's just backstory.
Yeah, I think cozy makes more sense with that, and I think that's something else to remember when you're talking about superheroes. First of all, it depends on what you have in it. So if you have a lot more detailed knowledge in it, and a lot, like you really break down the science a lot, then you are going to be tagged more as science fiction. But if you don't go into it as much, then you're pretty much tagged as fantasy, even though technically, you don't have magic or anything. You're going to find that fantasy readers enjoy that more. But if you go into the science a lot more, then you're going to find more science fiction people enjoy it.
I'm sure there are some superhero people who are doing the sciencey thing, but I haven't found any yet. I think
Mm-hmm.
almost every superhero one that I've read is more skewing towards the fake
Mm-hmm.
science fantasy level. Like um, Arthur Mayer's sidekicks was that way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell my mom or don't tell my parents I'm a supervillain.
Mm-hmm.
Also fun techie stuff. I'm trying to think of any that I've read that are on hard science, and I can't think of one. I'm sure they're out there, but I have not encountered one yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's just basically getting creative. And so that's just a reality of the genre for all of you guys who are watching this now and listening to this later. Um, when you think about superheroes, you think about a movie or a comic book or a cartoon or a TV show. You don't often think of books. And that's a really good sign that if you're going to write superhero fiction, it can be really fun and you can get sales with it, but it's not going to be the most natural fit for marketing. You have to work at it more.
Yeah, and those cross venue followers don't necessarily I don't know how many times I've seen it with YouTubers who put out a book
Mm-hmm.
and they've got all these like YouTube followers, but so they write a book and unless they're like a really, really huge YouTuber,
Mm-hmm.
it does not necessarily follow that they're going to get people buying the book.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that from some mildly successful YouTubers. Like if you're a megastar, sure, they'll
Mm-hmm.
just buy anything with your name on it. But like the mid-range ones, you think, oh, they've got 200,000 followers. If they put out a book, it's going to sell so many copies. And I've seen them do that and then post about their sales, and I'm like, those aren't great numbers, even
Yeah.
by my standards, because people who watch YouTube videos aren't necessarily people reading books. I
Uh-huh.
think the same thing could be said with people who read movies or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even comics. I say, as a mother who has a graphic novel obsessed daughter who I'm always trying to get to read chapter books, and she's like, yeah, she'll read like three a year. And then she'll go get a stack this high of graphic novels and read them all
Mm-hmm.
in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But, it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, so if you're talking about visual medium to text to primarily text-based medium, I mean, I know you do sort of read a comic book, but there's lots of visuals in it.
Yeah, and I've watched how Claire reads and with a graphic novel, and she'll read the text, but then she'll just linger on the pictures for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very essential to how she understands the story. And that's even with her having very high for her age reading comprehension as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I know is testing really high in reading. It's not necessarily about the ability, it's just the preference. And she
Mm-hmm.
just prefers those pictures and stuff. And like, that's just what she wants.
Mm-hmm. And so this would be an area where if you're in it, like don't go into it saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a first-time author and I am going to make all the money at this." Like I might suggest a different genre for that if you're in it purely for like making scads and scads of dollars. I mean, I'm sure there's some marketing
Maybe
whizzes out there
try
who could do it.
cryptocurrency instead.
Yeah. If you actually know, that's a good point. If you're really interested in the superhero thing, might I introduce you to urban fantasy first, and then once that goes well, then do your superhero stuff? Because actually, I will say that is one thing that I have got a number of sales of is that my urban fantasy readers who admittedly are waiting for my next book that I'm working on are kind of like, well, this is close enough. I'll read over to it. So if you're if profit is your main driver, work in an adjacent genre first and then do your superheroes. But if you're doing it just for the fun of it or the love of it, then I think it's a great way to just explore more of those stories.
Yeah, at this point in the superhero stuff, it's like it's marketing it is a lot of work, and I've got a day job now and like so many other projects. A lot of me is kind of content with the audience I have and just keep feeding them more and more of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a very good niche genre because it is so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like let's say you're an epic fantasy writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have your fan who just really loves epic fantasy. Um, she's probably reading you, but she's probably also reading like a dozen other authors. The one good thing about the superhero niche is if somebody wants superheroes, their options are limited to me and maybe five other writers. So I get them all. But it does lead to some fans who are just like really just waiting for that next one to come out because it's the only fix they're going to get on that,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know how sustainable it is, but for building a very vibrant audience that really cares about your stuff, it's really great that way.
Yeah. I mean, you
But it
have
is a
enough.
much smaller
You don't you
audience.
have fans who've written short stories and novellas for your universe?
Yeah, a few.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's
yep.
pretty cool.
Yeah, they really love it, and like they get sucked into the world and they want to be a part of the world, and like fan fiction and fan art, which is like I've written a lot, and this has gotten more fan art or adjacent stuff, more people who will have theories about the characters, and they'll write me, and like one of them was writing a like their list of a cookbook for the characters. I don't know if I'll ever see it, but I know they were working on it. So it
Hmm.
they just way more enthusiasm than in other genres I've written.
Hmm. So, kind of in summary for this, in terms of writing it, I think especially because it's going to be a smaller niche genre, make sure that you enjoy what you're saying. Make sure that you do have those elements of not that you don't have to have hard line, rigid good versus evil, but make sure you're discussing that in your story. Make sure that it is something where people are like, okay, I'm going to choose to think like, to think like a villain here. You're thinking in those kind of terms, or at least bringing that in there or something, because you are dealing with people who are trying to figure out how to handle these kind of powers. And with great power comes great responsibility. And think about your powers. And
That's one
then,
thing that it does. So the reluctant hero is a trope that I don't think works well in superhero.
yeah.
You have to make that choice to be a hero eventually, like within a pretty quick time frame, like first act. That's
Hmm.
first act stuff. Like other genres can draw out a reluctant hero for
Oh,
a
yeah.
very long time. I will get so annoyed if a superhero does that. Like
Yeah.
you need to know by the first act, end of the first act, dude, whether you're in or out on this hero stuff.
Yeah, yeah, because it does get old because that's not what we're here for. We're not here for
No, we're
the
here for
endless
the
back
hero.
and forth. We're here for the heroes, and we're here for what the heroes are
Mhm.
going to do, and we're going to hear what the villains are doing, and if the villain's really a villain, and what does it all mean, all of that stuff.
Yeah. What does it mean?
What does it mean?
What does it
And
mean? We need more angst. What does it mean?
oh no, that's yeah. And then when you're marketing, just expect that because it's a niche genre, if anyone tells you, yeah, go into superhero, super easy, or if someone misguidedly says, oh yeah, because no one's there, it's a genre that's ripe for people to come in and make tons of money on. No, sometimes people like the heavy hitters aren't there because it's a small niche area, and you can still have a great audience connection with it, but just have some realistic expectations.
See, I've never seen anybody claim superhero was going to be a moneymaker. Maybe they're out there, but like it
Oh,
was
there's
making
people who
lists
are
even
always
before.
willing to
Yeah,
sell you like the Brooklyn Bridge or something, but I
yeah. But even before I started writing it, it was popping up on lists of genres agents don't want for for a long time.
gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah.
So I think that was super helpful, and I'm excited you're here. So, oh, we have one great question that came up in the chat box too. Which superhero would you want as your friend, and which hero, even if genuinely well-meaning and kind, would you not want to have a friendship with?
Can I still say the cat,
Yeah,
or is that cheating?
you
Because
can
the
you
cat,
can say the cat.
because the cat is
You
my
can.
friend. I love him so much, or her. It's hard because that cat is a male cat. The cat
Uh,
actor is a male cat. I think his name is oh gosh, I used to know his name. There's actually a few of them, but there's a
mhm,
lead male cat, and he's a male cat, and you can tell by his face that's a male cat.
mhm,
But Goose, the character, is a female cat, so that always confuses. Or Florkin. I'm gonna say that I'm going to admit that the Goose the cat question is answer is cheating, and I'm gonna pick somebody else though.
mhm.
Huh. I'm too old to hang out with Spider Man. It would be creepy. Uh,
You'd be like a mother figure to him.
I know I can't. I can't do that. Um, I have my daughter would flirt with him, and it would just get awkward.
Yeah.
And so I can't do Spider Man. Um, I feel like if I had to pick a one I didn't want to hang out with, John Smith, Green Lantern, drives me crazy. He's just such
Oh
a
man.
stick up his butt. He's
Mm-hmm.
always grumpy. I don't want to deal with him. He's always grumpy. And
Okay.
actually, that is my other question. Again, going from Justice League Unlimited, I would like to hang out with that version of the Flash
Okay.
because he was a lot of fun, and he was just the one guy who was willing to make fun of himself and like deflate the situation,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. But he was also very kind and empathetic, and he would care about people around him. And I think that me and the Flash would be good buddies.
I
So I'll
think
pick
yeah.
him
Yes, I can see that.
and Goose the cat.
Goose the cat. Okay. I don't know. See, I actually am thinking I'm going to cross over. I was torn. So I think Professor X. The only thing is that he can read your mind, but especially Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart, is like my favorite and is awesome because basically you're sort of friends with Patrick Stewart, who also seems pretty awesome. So Professor X, and for DC, actually Superman, but only certain Superman versions, like not
Is he the
not
one
the
you don't want to hang out with, or the one you
no, I
do?
would, but only if it's the one, the Superman and Lois. They did a series, Superman and Lois. I watched the first two
Hmm.
seasons of that, and that was a very friendly, likable Superman. Like they chose a guy who actually looked really attractive, but also believably geeky at the same time. Like he
Yeah.
just
Is
his
that the
ears,
one with the lady from Grimm in it?
yeah, and
Okay.
it was he was both he's really attractive, but his ears are a bit big, and he just looks like he could be a bit of a yokel and like really fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
And for not hanging out with, I mean, I, I'm sorry, Eric Lensher. You have issues. So Magneto, nope.
Does Magneto count as a superhero? Are we also doing
Oh, sorry.
villains? Because
Oh,
then
he's super villain. That's true. That doesn't count. I okay. For superheroes, I wouldn't want to hang out with. Oh,
if we're not hanging out with villains, there's a lot
of
of villains.
course.
And
There's a
just
lot of
hanging out with
villains.
them.
It's true. You got me there. Okay. Oh well, who was that one? Oh, I can't think of his name. I mean, to be fair, Green Lantern is really annoying. So that's a pretty good
Just
one
that,
to say.
yeah.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so much fun. Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna bring up Superman again.
Ironic, he was annoying.
Brandon Ruth, Superman from Superman Returns, because he was just
He was
boring.
incredibly forgettable. I
Yeah, he
don't
was
remember
boring.
anything about that Superman,
But
which is
that's
sad
why,
because
like, it would be nothing. Because a
yeah.
lot of them, I think, even if I didn't like them as a character, they're still at least interesting. But he was just
Yeah.
like a blank slate, which is so weird because the actor can be really charismatic, and
Yep.
he just nope, not there, not
The
there.
writing in that was sus.
It was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, so now we've talked about all these things and about how you have people writing for your universe, and I hear that people are writing for your universe right now. You have some anthologies coming out.
Yes, there's two that are up on a Kickstarter right now. These will be two anthologies of 17 stories total. The first anthology has 9 stories, and the second has 8. Both have a story from me, and then from I guess it would be 16 other writers, including Janine here. She's
Including
got one in
me.
there. Um, got a lot of first-time writers, or I would say first published writers in these ones. Like I like that when my story or my anthology gets to bring some new voices to the table. So I'm excited for that. And then there's also some old favorites, some returning favorites. This is my These are my second and third anthology I've done in this universe, and my first one. So Co Bonham's returning, Amber Gabrielle's returning, Janelle Leanne Schmidt's returning. I think those are the only 3 returning voices this time. Um, oh no, Karen Eisenbray is returning, so that's 4. So if I miss somebody who is in both sets, I'm sorry. I have a cold. I'm putting everything on the cold.
It's all good.
But
Yep.
yeah, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yep. So hop over there. Uh, it is currently funded, which is awesome, and we have our first stretch goal. But we just dropped some new stuff there, including we'd love these to be audiobooks. So
It'll be very nice to be audiobooks.
if you were so
I usually work
inclined,
with Rena Gell. Oh, I am listening to the audio files for Power Play, which Rena Gell did for me. That's one of my second things. So I'm very much in the audio. Like it's like a movie of your book almost, at least for me. Because I like to be surprised by some of the portrayals. I'm weird about that. Like I'll tell my cover artist to surprise me, and I want to see what the characters look like in somebody else's mind too. I don't have a very tight hold on my fictional IPs. I like it when other people give me their spin on them. So the audio version, it's a lot like that. I
Mhm.
feel like I'd be an author who would be decent to work with a movie studio. I'm not saying
She'd
you
be like,
should
I don't
buy
care.
my scripts, but yeah, yeah.
Just have
I would
fun.
be a little more open-handed about some of the creative decisions just because I just want to see what other people do with the ideas, you know?
Hmm. So if that's interesting to you, hop over then. I believe it finishes March 28th. So if you're watching or listening to this after then, it has closed. But if not, hop over there. 10 days, hop over there and check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with us here at Author Culture for the first live stream. And in a comment, go ahead and shout out your favorite superhero and, of course, Marvel or DC. And if you haven't already, do hit the like and subscribe button so that you never miss upcoming live streams as well. Thank
Oh,
you.
jump scare.
And thank you, Heidi, for being here. Go forth and be awesome.
I am so loopy. Oh my gosh. Mm,
Okay,
okay.
we did it.
We did.
Yay.
There were so many times it was I don't